Cavs figure to be active. Who do you like for the Cavs to go after and potentially get?
Well, it depends on how much they're willing to give up at the end of the day, because it's been reported today by Bleacher Report's Jake Fisher that the Indiana Pacers are still looking for 2 first-round picks or a first-round pick and a young player for Caris LeVert, who's a player who's been linked to the Cavs for quite a while now, just in terms of trade chatter. Eric Gordon, the Houston Rockets, are looking for a first-round pick for his talents as well. So again, if Cleveland's comfortable with paying that kind of price, I think they can go in on it, because let's look at this in the grand scheme of things. Like I stressed in the last segment, they have an established big three of Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen. You want to build around those three. And I don't think adding another 19, 20-year-old through the draft is the best way to do it at this point. If you really want to accelerate this rebuild, make up the loss of Colin Sexton and Ricky Rubio in the year, you get one of those guys. But if I had a preference, I think I'd say Caris LeVert, just because he provides scoring, he provides defense, he provides a little bit of playmaking. I think he could be had for a little bit less than what Indiana's asking for. I think this is just posturing and bargaining. I think it's good business to say, if you tell the media, well, we want this amount, but in reality, you're actually willing to settle for this amount, that's just smart business at this point. Because if you're looking to rebuild or retool, getting a first-round pick and Ricky Rubio for Caris LeVert isn't a bad place to start. And then maybe you figure out, if you're the Pacers, what you want to do after that. But if you're Cleveland, you really want to find some wing support, some wing depth. And then, like I said, if you can use that injury exception you got from Rubio, you have the trade exception from JaVale McGee as well. Maybe you go find a backup point guard or somebody who can play a little bit more reliably than Rajon Rondo, just because I'm not saying Rondo's a bad player, but he's in his mid-30s and has 16 years of experience on his body and a lot of mileage. So that could be a little bit of an issue of itself down the line too.
Is there anybody backup point guard wise that comes to mind that you like, that you just names to listen out for? And I'm with
Dennis
you.
Schroeder's.
Rondo doesn't score enough to do what they're looking for their point guard to do. You know, there are times you watch him and teams are daring him to shoot, and he's unable to make them pay the way that, you know, not only Garland, but some of the other options that the Cavs use.
Well, I think they're kind of playing Rondo. I'll answer the second question in a second, or the first question in a second here. But the way they're playing Rondo is they're kind of using him like Ricky Rubio, where they're asking him to score, they're asking him to create offense, and that's not really his game. You do notice that he slows down things when he's out there. He pinpoints it, acts like it's chess out there, where he's trying to tell players where they need to be on the floor for a certain play to set it up. And he's right. I mean, he's a cerebral player. He's a Hall of Fame talent for a reason, and that's fine. But I think the Cavs, maybe during the All-Star break, adjust and tinker things a little bit just so they can maximize having Rondo on the floor, because I think it's a smart thing to play him next to Darius Garland, because JB Bickerstaff said he's taking some of the playmaking pressure off of Garland and letting him thrive as just an off-ball shooter and an off-ball scorer, and just really unlocking his offensive game, which I think is smart. But if you're looking for a name, and I personally think Cleveland's culture is too stable to break, you could maybe look at a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who can be a bit of a malcontent sometimes, but he is a able-bodied point guard. He's young. I think he's in his late 20s at this point. He is sitting in Boston as their backup point. The Celtics don't really know where they're going to go here. Maybe they could kind of just try and get under the tax threshold. They could use that Rubio exception and attach a second-round pick to it, and Boston could be pretty well off for that, because they can slash Schroeder's salary from their payroll and then just kind of get a second-round pick for their troubles. And I think that'd be a solid backup. And then you keep Rondo as just a break glass in case of emergency kind of option, or maybe he plays spot minutes every now and then too, and JB Bickerstaff can get even more creative with his lineups. But it's definitely interesting to think about. I think Schroeder's just a name to watch, and somebody I've heard who's kind of popped up every now and then just in the grand sphere of trade chatter.
Yeah, I've heard him attached to that exemption that they got, the hardship exemption with Rubio that you mentioned as well, that's kind of what they were targeting. All right, before I let you go, got to ask you this one. Is there any guy out there that you would be willing to trade Colin Sexton or Isaac Okoro or both if the Cavs are able to put those together to get?
See, that's a tough question in itself, because I don't know what teams would be willing to trade for Sexton, because you want to, if I was an opposing general manager, I would want to look at Colin Sexton's full bill of health, see how he looks post-op as well. And that's a little tough. But if you're willing to gamble the potential, I think if you go big name hunting, I think you look at Jalen Brown in Boston because I really do think that situation's a time bomb, and Jason Tatum's their guy, so they're going to build around him going forward. So maybe you offer like Larry Markkinen and Isaac Okoro or Colin Sexton along with a first round pick, or you try to get in on a Sabonis trade with Sabonis going to Boston, and you get Jalen Brown for your trouble. It's not a bad consolation prize, granted, but I think if it's that type of caliber player, especially with just the defensive impact Isaac Okoro provides on a night to night basis, you get him. Or maybe you look at Brandon Ingram in New Orleans as well, who I think fits almost perfectly on this Cavs team. It's just you want to bring back a young star caliber player if you're willing to cash in some of your more valuable young assets because draft picks, you're not too certain with what those are. These guys are on set pay roles, set contracts, and you kind of have an idea of what talent they are at this point in the league. So you want to get something equal to that if you're Cleveland because at this point, why would you want to cash in and kind of maybe rock the boat a little too much if you're not going to get something worth your troubles?